How's it going, Apush? Because we have period 7 review video for you today.
Today we're going to review the progressive era. How did that impact American society, politics, and economics ideas? We're also going to review the progressive presidents, reforms, women, how they were involved in it, and we're also going to review acts or laws that were passed during the era. Then we're going to review the imperialism. Why did the United States decided to expand abroad? And we're gonna talk about the Spanish War. Then we're gonna review World War One. We're just gonna focus on the main cause of the war and how it impacted the home front. Then we're gonna talk about the Great Depression, why there was so many people without jobs. Um, the New Deals, how did they help with the Great Depression? We're gonna talk about the 1920s and 1930s, how the decades impacted American society. We're also gonna talk about the Great Migration, why so many African American moved to the north. We're gonna spend a little time reviewing the World War II and why did it started, how did it end.
Period
Um,
7 is the longest period in
yeah.
Apush, so I don't want to make this long. There's so much stuff to cover, to remember. So let's get into this video.
Imperialism, the policy in which a stronger nation expand their economic, politic, and military control over weaker territories in the 1890s marked a great turning point in American history, the United States becoming a global power. Frederick Jackson Turner published The Significance of American Frontier, in which he argued that the frontier was causing so many pro expansion, argued that since the frontier was causing, then America should expand its expansion abroad to compete with Europe and China, Japan over Asia. There were many motives for imperialism. One was economic, to open new trade for agriculture and manufactured goods, to have easy access to raw materials. Another one was politics. The United States wanted to become the world power. The was a period of widespread social activism and policy reform across the United States from 1890. The Progressive War The Progressive era was a period of widespread social activism and political reforms across the United States from 1890 to 1920. The progressives were women in the middle class and people who lived in the urban area. They responded to the extreme corruptions of the workplace conditions, economic politics, and social corruptions. Their main focus was to eliminate problems that were caused by industries, immigrants, and corruptions of the government. They also hoped to improve work rights conditions for poor and immigrants, and also to end segregation and Jim Crow laws. The progressive reforms were to improve the working condition in industries, to help immigrants and the poor, to end child labor, to bring the government back to the people. A great example of this is the 17th Amendment.
um, to bring fairness and opportunities in the workplace.
During the progressive eras, there were people called the muckrakers. They were writers and journalists who exposed the problems of society that everyone tried to ignore in order to bring awareness and reforms to it.
The jungle was intended to increase support for socialism and workers' rights. The Meat Inspection Act was passed because of the explosion of how meat used to be produced with unknown chemicals. So they passed the Meat Inspection Act so the government would inspect how meat is produced. The Food and Drug Act was passed so that people know what type of things that they're putting in their body and how they made, what ingredients they have in them. The progressive president also followed the idea of the progressive and the concern that they were presented. They did and found ways to make those concerns a thing in the past. Roosevelt believed that the government should manage environment, drug, and food industries. He also wanted to protect the middle class from big business. When Taft took office, he promised to continue the progressive policies that Roosevelt left behind. He broke up more trusts than Roosevelt. He also the election of 1912, Roosevelt created a new party. Taft was nominated by the Republicans. Wilson ran on the progressive platform called the New Freedom. The Socialists also nominated a candidate. Wilson did a lot of stuff during the progressive era, as you can see above. He broke down trusts, banking reforms, and tough reforms too. Sacco and Vanzetti were two Italian immigrants who were charged with burglary and murder. They were both found guilty and were sentenced life in prison. Later on, both of them were. The rise of nativists abroad influenced the expand into the Midwest, the hate toward immigrants, Catholics, and radicals. During the 1920s, Americans continued their transition from agriculture to industry manufacture. New technology emerged: the assembly line, refrigerators, cars, models, and many more. In 1970, new mass media helped spread culture and awareness. The radio was one of the biggest sources of entertainment during the 1920s. Americans continued their transition from agriculture to industry. New technology emerged: the assembly line, refrigerators, cars, and many more. In 1920s, new mass media helped spread culture. The radio was the biggest source of entertainment during the war. Movies entertained people during the Great Depression. The Jazz Singers were the first movie with sound. Controversy during the 1920s. During the 1920s, Americans continued their transition from agriculture to industry economic. The Great Depression was the worst and the longest downturn in our economic history, throwing millions of hardworking individuals into poverty for more than a decade. Franklin Roosevelt New Deals helped the Great Depression. Sacco and Vanzetti were two Italian immigrants who were charged with burglary and murder. They were both found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. They were both executed in 1927, although they never admitted that they. The rise of nativists abroad influenced the expand into the Midwest, the hate toward immigrants, Catholics, and radicals. During the 1920s, Americans continued their transition from agriculture to industry economic. New technology emerged, assembly line, refrigerators, cars, and many more. In 1920s, new mass media helped spread culture and awareness. The radio was the biggest source of entertainment during the war. Movies entertained people during the Great Depression, and jazz singers were the first movie with sound. Controversy and debates over gender role increased. Changes gender morals by wearing shorter skirts, smoking, drinking, dancing in public. Women became leaders in a range of social and politics movements from 1890 to 1920 during the Progressive Era. They wanted to end political corruption, improve the lives of immigrants, black and women too. The women's suffrage was a women fought for women's rights, and finally the 19th Amendment gave the women the right to vote. The Great Migration, the movement of African Americans to the northern city for job opportunities and to escape segregation. The Great Depression was the worst and the longest downturn in our economic history, threw millions of hard-working individuals into poverty. Franklin Roosevelt New Deals helped end the Great Depression and also change the relationship between the people and the government. That is all for this period. If you want more details, check out other videos on YouTube. As a result, to end the war, United States bombed Japan and Nagasaki and Hiroshima. That is all for this period. If you want more details, check out other videos on YouTube. That is all for this period. If you want more details, check out other videos on YouTube.